Greetings and welcome back to another episode of the Daily Run, and today we're playing as Isaac. With Isaac you usually expect a lot of variance, but thankfully today's daily wasn't that bad, and mainly because that first devil deal contained a really strong item which essentially carried the run, which means that if there's only one item which you usually don't reroll, there's no variance, because everybody starts out really powerful at the start, so we all have the same playing ground. Of course, in turn that means that the daily is easier to play as, which in turn means that the skill or finding a way to break the game is much more important because the consumable bonuses and the Shrek bonus is much more important. But you can see that here we started out with two pretty good items. They're both new items, the Contagion item and the Little Horn item. I believe it's called Little Horn, which is the same as the actual boss, which is a bit confusing, but nevertheless, Little Horn is the simpler of the two items, and what it does, it gives you a chance to fire a shot, which I believe has higher damage, and it's penetrative, and I also think it's spectral. So it's quite fun, you know, nothing too breaking or overpowered in that sense, but it has some fun effects and can actually deal quite a significant amount of damage. Of course, when we pick up Brimstone, that is all negated, because we do have both spectral and piercing shots in Brimstone, and the damage is quite high. But I hope that at least it synergizes that on some ticks, you do deal some increased damage, and on some things obviously you wouldn't. And I don't know how it is, I haven't found any new really cool synergies yet of Afterbirth Plus, and I'm really missing that. And I don't know if it's just me, and I just maybe didn't counter them, maybe I just have a combination of items which inherently don't synergize together, but I always felt like the core of Isaac is just having really a lot of fun synergies, and I hope that there are some fun synergies in Afterbirth Plus with some of the new items as well. The other item that I got very early on was Contagion, and Contagion is an interesting item, and essentially when you kill an enemy there's a chance that they will shoot a fart, well not shoot a fart, just fart, and poison enemies around them, and I always felt like this is how the Common Cold should have worked, because Common Cold is obviously a cold which is famous for being contagious, which means if you poison one enemy, that there should be a chance for that enemy to poison another enemy if they maybe come in contact with them or something like that. But of course it doesn't really work that way, and I'm sad it doesn't work that way, because at least that way you could distinguish it from Scorpio somewhat. And why does Scorpio poison? I understand scorpions are poisonous, but I don't get it. I really don't get it. Someone explain that to me. Why is Scorpio poisons? I don't know. But the Common Cold, as it is. But this is kind of more in that pandemic style. No, it's much more contagious, I guess, which means it can affect more enemies. It's actually a great item. It's much like the Toxic Shock. It's one of those items which helps you just clear the room so much faster because of how much stopping power you have. And not really in the sense that you deal a lot of damage, but just because it deals damage to a lot of enemies, and then when they actually get poisoned, I really feel like poison is an underappreciated stat. I think poison is one of those things that you don't really appreciate until you have a weak run, and then you realize just how much damage it does. And I really like the poison effect, and not only because it increases basically the DPS you do, but also because you can just shoot an enemy, and then you can effectively hide from the enemy until they die. And I feel like that's quite of a cheeky tactic, which I like to abuse obviously whenever I can, and it's a really fun thing to actually get going whenever you can poison enemies and keep applying that poison to the next enemy, and they explode in fires and they explode more enemies. It's a really fun item, I can't complain about it. The only thing I have the problem is with poison, or just status effects in general, is they don't really affect bosses that much, because whenever you poison a boss or just inflict any status effect, there's like a little cooldown where you have to wait before inflicting, or before you can inflict another of the same type of effect you just afflicted before. But now that we're pretty much set on damage, we even picked up technology, and might be saying, you already had Brimstone, why would you need technology? In fact, technology since Afterbirth, I believe, increases the damage you deal with Brimstone, and what it does, if you actually look at my beam, it has like this spiral pattern on top of it, which looks like technology, and I believe that spiral pattern also deals damage, which means that we're effectively dealing damage both of technology and of Brimstone, and that damage from technology actually stacks multiplicatively, that's the right word, with Brimstone, because it effectively hits every single tick that Brimstone hits, and I believe, or at least it feels like, my damage has been hugely increased, not in the stat department, but just in how much damage I actually deal to enemies. So that's quite a nice synergy, and I think it looks really cool. And you probably can't see it because it's sped up, but if you play the daily, or if you go play the seed, you can actually pick this one up, and it's a ton of fun to play as. The only complaint I would have about this run is that we're quite slow, and I never like being slow, especially in a situation where I can only shoot in 4 directions, and when that happens, essentially if there are more enemies coming at you from different directions, you really need to dodge, at least until you can charge up another beam. Thankfully our tear shot speed is quite high, so we can actually effectively kill enemies pretty fast, but there's still that tiny glimmer of Inya's ability, I would say, where you have to shoot and charge the shot while the enemies are kind of going at you, and you can't really shoot backwards. Thankfully, we picked up Mom's Eye, and that was the main reason why I picked up Mom's Eye, because I really think that's a very huge detriment. So now, at least occasionally, we'll be able to kill enemies behind us. With homing shots, it's actually quite fun. If you stand in the middle, you can kind of kill, or at least shoot both enemies on both sides if you get just a bit lucky. And I think that the chance or frequency of Mom's Eye shots has increased, at least from Afterbirth. I know in the base game it was super rare to actually get 2 shots at once, and maybe even in Rebirth, but I really enjoyed the fact that it makes it quite constant, you know. Like, I would say every second shot is double shot, which just makes it really fun to look at. It's usually not that effective, it usually doesn't do anything because you're only firing in one direction, but it's a cool synergy, and I'm really glad. And that's what I'm saying, I really need these cool synergies in my life if I want to play Isaac for a long time. And of course, thankfully, we have modding for that. At this point, I was trying to make a point before, and basically when we have the D6 and we actually have a really strong run going on, we don't really need to save our D6 charges for the Devil Deal like I usually would. Because what I usually bank on is rerolling my Devil Deals in some really good items, you know, like Brimstone, the Pact, Mom's Knife, maybe some other items I'm missing, but essentially I'm just rerolling that Devil Deal pool because I feel it's quite contained and it has a lot of good items, in hopes of getting an item that will really boost the power of my run. And when that happens, or when I get strong enough and I do find those items, then I focus on rerolling the shop, because essentially what I said before, when you have a really strong run, or especially on a run that's with Isaac, you can expect a lot of variance, which means that people will find ways to get really powerful. They will reroll a combination of items you just won't even think of, and they'll find tech hacks in the first treasure room because they decided to reroll it 5 times, when you obviously thought that rerolling the prayer card might be a better idea, or whatever, you know, it doesn't really matter how they get to it, but the fact that so many people do play these dailies, there's a good chance that someone will find a run which will just break it and they'll just become super powerful. So once you get powerful enough to actually be quite comfortable in your position, so you know that you won't get damaged too much, you should start focusing on finding a way to break the game. And I find the best way to actually increase your consumable bonus is usually the shop. It has a ton of great items which just help overall with defense and being just overall just a bit more safe, with things like the stopwatch, for example, or some orbitals. I'm not sure they're orbitals, but like Champion's Belt is also very useful because it increases the frequency of champion enemies, and then those give you more points for actually killing them. But more importantly, it has a lot of items which increase how many consumables you get. So in this case, we got Humbling Bundle, which effectively doubles the score we'll get from consumables, and even more importantly, we got the jar. And again, I know I've had the jar like 10 episodes ago, I would say, maybe you didn't see it, but the jar is amazing in dailies. Effectively what it does, it allows you to get an unlimited amount of score. And with the Humbling Bundle is one of those crazy synergies that you kind of can just break the game with 2 items. And there's not a lot of items or combinations of items which require only 2 items that allow you to break the game so well as this one does. And essentially what you do is, whenever you use your spacebar item, you drop a heart, and when you pick up a heart you gain points, but whenever you drop it with the jar, you don't lose any points, which means that effectively just keep doing that. You can get an unlimited amount of points, or at least up until the cap, the asymptotic the asymptotic cap hits, which means the soft cap, soft lock, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, you can only get 15,000 points, and then it's very hard to go above that because the time penalty is actually much higher and deducts your points faster than you can actually start gaining the points from consumables. That was the point I was trying to make. But when you're at that point, you pretty much broke the run in that sense. You know that you're at the limit and that nobody shouldn't find a way to actually get more points unless they were maybe faster and that cap wasn't high enough. And with the jar, that's really easy. And when we actually drop a heart on the ground and then pick it up again, it actually gets doubled because of Humbling Bundle, which means when we pick up a heart, we get 2 hearts, and when we do that like 10 times, we just get unlimited hearts in the room, which means we can just stand in a corner or even just stand anywhere and the hearts will bounce us around, and we just smash that spacebar button to actually get just a bunch of points. And that's something I end up doing here, and just in fact, I think this was my best daily run so far, at least in the terms of how much score I got. I was still 4th on Gridbot, which was very discouraging to say the least, but you know, it is what it is. I will get that top 3. The challenge, the hunt for top 3 continues. But for now, I'm really satisfied with this run overall, because I felt like I played okay, even though I had very low speed, which is usually the death of me. I felt like I managed to dodge well, and that's always a great feeling when you know that you're kind of disadvantaged. Obviously we have a lot of damage, we're not insta-shotting enemies, but still enough damage, and the best part is that even though I know that my weaknesses are that it's hard to dodge, I was able to overcome that and actually have a really good run going here. I think I only got hit like 5 or 6 times in total, which led up to 3000 total damage bonus, I mean deduction, not bonus. And that was okay, you know. I felt like I usually do much worse, especially on these runs, even if they're really strong, and especially the strong ones, because you do tend to get just a little bit carried away. You feel like you're stronger than you actually are, and then suddenly that big horn just throws 5 bombs at you, and you just end up getting hit for no reason. But you can see the strategy here is we just have a bunch of hearts. So if you have someone you love, you can send them this video and just say that the amount of hearts represents how much you love them. And that is it. We are at 16th, at least on the leaderboards. I told you on the grid, but we are 4th. And of course I did skip that part. I think I broke the game. I mean, I was mashing the spacebar button for like 7 minutes, which is much less than yesterday. Thankfully, the cracked dice and IV back combo is just menacing. I really feel like that's a separate layer of hell. But with the Jarring Heart, thankfully it's a bit easier. You can see that our swag bonus isn't quite capped, and the main reason for that is that we only have 20 keys. And actually, the main reason, the swag bonus is kind of divided in 2 parts. One part is actually getting consumables in general, and the other part is maxing out all of your consumable spots, so having 99 cents, 99 bombs, and 99 keys. In this case, getting 99 keys would improve our score for like another 2000 points, I would say, maybe 1500, but overall, a very good run. I would say that my item penalty was a bit high, and obviously my time penalty, but I did break the game, so I do have that excuse. So yeah, 4th. We're very close. We're gonna get there eventually. I tell you, the hunt is on, and that fight for the top 3 is not gonna stop now. I hope you enjoyed this one, guys, and I hope to see you next time.